Hi, my name is Samantha Lee, and I'm here today to talk about the effects of distance and online learning and an emergency response, which is in our current case the event of COVID 19. The world had been informed about the global pandemic during the beginning of the year 2020 and made the decision to close down or reduce the hours of certain establishments due to safety concerns. One of the institutions across the world, schools, were shut down and transferred to remote teaching, impacting more than 94% of the world's student population. Today, we will be looking at three groups of students across the world and their experiences with online teaching. These groups are New Zealand high school students about to graduate, students ranging from grades 7 to 12 from Slovakia, and students for Bhutan. Not only were students the only one affected by these changes, but teachers were as well. Because of the sudden and demanding changes, teachers and students from everywhere had no choice but to adapt to this new style of teaching and learning that was not familiar to everyone. Distance education theories had always been in development with resources, platforms, and teaching methods that were carefully considered and taken time to develop. However, emergency remote teaching must stay distinct from this high quality online teaching, especially when people are looking at it at a temporary lens. Higher education institutions, universities, and colleges seemed more prepared for this sudden situation and adapted to it more easily compared to primary and secondary schools, as they had never considered distance previously. The secondary chemistry and science teachers from Slovakia needed to find a way to transfer experiments and laboratories to an online environment. Thankfully, they had the development of modern information and communication technologies to help continue creating experiments, focusing on the practical aspects. Even with this backing, these teachers still face problems. There is a weakness of online teaching as it is not familiar to all teachers, yet they all had no choice but to adapt to this new style of education with little to no alternatives. Some teachers received limited training, and those who were technologically backward struggled more, requiring more time or taking more time in class. In the New Zealand study of students who spent less time studying at home, 66% felt like they learned less at home than they would at school. In the other case of students who spent more time studying, 35% felt like they learned more. These participants valued agency and independence and wanted a choice of selecting what needed more of their time. They liked the flexibility they saw in the remote teaching and hoped to see it continued in the classroom when returning to face-to-face education. The free time made them feel like they were not trapped at school and helped self-directed learning. Only 10% preferred learning at home, making the place of choice school, but hoped for continued control over time. Compared to Slovakia students, 70% of students preferred working at home because they were able to sleep in later and work in a less stressful environment. The New Zealand students who did prefer home over school complained about distractions in school like disruptive classmates or experienced bullying. Even though students were given freedom, some struggled to self-manage as no one was looking after them. This lack of time management resulted in lack of motivation and learning, especially not having the routine of school where students could get up early in the day and take breaks in between. There was also a complaint of increased workload, creating a lack of self-management and coordination. Although the New Zealand students liked their freedom, of the 23% who had choice learned more, and of 49% who had choice learned less. 39% of New Zealand students cited motivation when asked the hardest part of learning at home. This lack of motivation was linked to issues like family obligations, distractions, inaccessibility of help, and a lack of distinction between home and school. Students would be too uncertain with the state of the world to have complete focus on school. Timing choice is another demotivator. For the Slovakia students, who now had a more comfortable environment, 20% of the students complained of lack of time management and an inability to stay focused. It was difficult to do homework when it was easy for them to leave that behind and choose using their free time doing another activity. In undeveloped countries like Bhutan, parents with children felt like it was acceptable for them to repeat grades. During the long break enforced by school closure, students were dropping out and opting to discontinue school, seeing that as a better option than attending remote classes. In Bhutan, the majority of learners are from rural villages whose parents were mostly illiterate farmers. These students were encouraged to help their family, especially after having to be home permanently, which made it difficult to keep up with lessons after. The internet was also costly when compared to their income. A report in Poland, which is near Slovakia, showed about 330,000 students did not have an access to a computer connected to the internet. 1,320,000 students had a number of computers in their household lower than the students living there. This resulted in students having to use small screens or mobile devices or choosing not to participate at all. Collaboration and online conversation were both for learning and emotional support. 53% of New Zealand students preferred the familiarity of collaboration from in-person classrooms. Those who preferred online collaboration were also those who tended to learn more at home. However, 67% thought collaboration was less helpful than compared to in-person classes, and also learned less at home. Less than 10% experienced collaboration that was better than in-person classes. Daily interaction with peers helped make their days more manageable and preferred the proximity to others and the immediacy of support. It also enabled casual conversation. It was easier to attract the attention of others in person rather than finding a convenient time to message peers of teachers or waiting for a response. Zoom felt unnatural because only one person could talk at a time, which was usually the teacher. Students would turn off videos and microphones, which caused them to not participate. It was difficult to sit in front of a screen all day with no interaction. Some students reported studying up to 9 hours a day after Zoom calls, which resulted in doing schoolwork all day and all night. Students reported feeling uncomfortable asking questions in class, on Zoom, or through email. They were demotivated when there was delay in the teacher's response, which was already an effort of asking a question and waiting. 33% of Slovakia students complained about problems understanding the content. However, they had the inability to ask questions since lessons were too fast-paced. In Bhutan, more students dropped out or opted out of examination due to reduced contact and consultations of teachers. Lev Vygotsky emphasized the need for social interaction for cognitive development. Earlier studies show that school transport, commuting, and routine had influenced cognition and educational achievement. It is essential for students to engage in offline activities and self-exploratory learning. It is important to emphasize that, like in-person teaching, there is no one-size-fits-all for online teaching. Different age group and different subjects require different and multiple approaches. Michael G. Moore says the only distance between teachers and learning is transactional distance, which is determined by dialogue, structure, and learner's autonomy. Borji Holmberg, a European education pioneer, says the only condition needed to successful distant education is empathy. Teachers need to develop a relationship with the students, which will create a sense of belonging in the learning community, which will result in the students' motivation. Teachers need to be supportive by checking in and giving feedback. They should provide resources with clear expectations and time limits. Providing emotional support is important, especially if support networks are limited. Online platforms can be continued to be explored and used as additional resources. This was an opportunity to teach in innovative ways. This is not limited to the pandemic, as anything unexpected may happen in the future. The only thing teachers can do is be prepared. The global pandemic has affected everyone and continues to affect people today. Although people are slowly transitioning back to in-person classes, things are no longer the same. People are continuing to do research on this topic since it is fairly new, but the effects and results of staying home while continuing to attend classes are clear. We can take what we have learned to continue to support students as they deal with other factors in life that we may not think of. These factors may get in the way of their studies. To help these students, we must build a connection with them to provide their best education with communication and adaptability. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me talk.